Welcome to the World Extreme Medicine Podcast. My name's Will Duffin, GP and Education Lead. Given that we're not able to deliver face-to-face expedition medicine courses that normally take place around the world, we are instead bringing some of the world's most outrageous and maverick minds directly to your earbuds, so please sit back and enjoy. Today's guest is a self-declared mischief maker, Anna McNuff. Anna's a global keynote speaker, author, and adventurer, and she's all about epic human-powered journeys. She cycled 11,000 miles across all 50 US states. She cycled the length of the Andes, ran the length of New Zealand, and she shares these journeys with others along the way, speaking at schools and to other groups as she goes. She's also the UK's Girl Guiding Ambassador. She's on a mission to inspire and empower the next generation of bold women. And her latest adventure just last year was to run the distance of 90 marathons from Shetland to London in just her bare feet. That happened. Anna, welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thank you so much for having me on. I'm listening thinking, who is this loon? Who is that nutter? It's me.
That's you.
It's me. That did happen.
Do you ever have a moment where you check yourself and you think, how on earth how have I done all of that?
I do. I definitely have moments in the middle of an adventure when I'm exhausted and I think, why can't I just be a normal person? Why can't I just do normal things? But then that kind of passes after a few hours and I'm like, nah, this is great. Let's carry on.
Yeah. So where are you calling from today?
Oh, I'm in lovely Gloucestershire, which is my adopted home. I'm from the outskirts of London originally, but my other half, he's a crazy adventurer too, does mad things like run across countries dressed as superheroes. And he's from Gloucester. So I've lived out here for 5 years now. And I love it, and very good for social distancing because there's not many people out and about. So I've got free reign on my runs and my cycle.
Oh, lovely. Beautiful part of the world, Gloucestershire. I'm just in Bristol, so not too far
It
away.
is.
But due to the
lockdown,
unfortunately, we're not ever able to see anyone physically.
No, but I'm waving at you down the A38.
Because you could have, you started your career as a much more conventional athlete. Your parents were both Olympians, weren't they? And you could easily have gone down that route. You represented GB for rowing.
Yeah, I did. It's really strange. I mean, I think when you're a kid, you just take whatever environment you grow up in as normal. And I grew up in an environment where both my parents went to Moscow 1980 Olympics. They're rowers, so I got a pretty good deal in the gene pool. Although all I actually got was freakishly long arms. That was the deal that I got.
Swimming.
And yeah, great for swimming, but I became a rower. So I just from a really young age, I just thought that is the way the world works. You pick a sport, you work hard, you go to the Olympics, end of. And so I actually hated rowing for a very long time, and I played football and did all sorts of other things. But by the time I was 23, I was in the Great Britain squad. But the Beijing Olympics came round in 2008. And I had put heart and soul into making the team, or trying to make the team, and I didn't make the selection for the 8 that went. And it just was like a sucker punch because, I was 23 and I thought, how is this? I've worked so hard. This isn't the way the world should work. I should be getting what I wanted. I've given everything. And then I was just faced with the decision of, do I cling on for another 4 years in the hope that this massive Olympic dream is going to make me happier than I've ever imagined, or do I actually take a reality check and question what I do want to do in life? And at that point, I decided to give up being an elite athlete and try and find a different pathway. So that's where it all began.
So in a sense, was that a time in your life where things were quite difficult, where you felt like that dream was falling apart, but do you feel that enabled something even cooler to fall together?
Yeah, absolutely. It's without a doubt the hardest decision I've ever made because you don't know anything else, and your whole identity is wrapped up in being a rower at that time. It wasn't just I was giving up a sport; I was giving up who I was. It felt like, and when people asked me, "Oh, what do you do?" I couldn't say I was a rower anymore. I couldn't, or I'm trying for the Olympics. So it stripped away any sort of conversation I had about my life direction. I just pulled a blank face. But it was, I have never regretted that decision because what it did was it allowed that space for me to think and to question, rather than just staying in these train tracks and not questioning where I was going. I actually went, well, just because I once wanted this, do I actually want this anymore? And the answer was, do you know what? I loved travel. I loved adventure. I used to read books about places from all over the world. And actually, rowing was amazing, but I was only ever seeing countries going backwards down a 2 kilometre lake. And then you get back on the plane and go home again. And so actually, it turned out that probably wasn't my kind of career that I wanted to do. And so that's how I ended up. It took me another 5 years of doing normal jobs and working in marketing and sitting in offices and lining up PowerPoint boxes before I realised that I could do this adventure thing where I brought my love of sport and pushing my body and a bit of pain, and I could put that together with seeing the world. And what you get off the back of that is long distance running, cycle touring, long distance swimming, all these cool things that allow you to be sporty, but there's a lot more creative freedom in it. So that's how I got to adventuring.
Yeah, I can see that it's a real creative outlet for you.
It is, yeah. And that's another thing. I used to love writing at school, but I then did badly on exams. So you think, well, maybe I'm not supposed to write. But then you go on an adventure and you feel so compelled to share it with the world. And so you start writing, and then people enjoy your writing, and you think, oh, I don't need an exam paper to tell me I can write a book. So the adventures really have become like the inspiration, and then everything else I do is what really brings me the joy. It's brilliant.
Part of this role for me, and one of the great things I love is speaking to people like you, Anna, who have bucked convention. I think we all have a script that's handed to us in life. Often in our childhood, it's the way that we think things have to go. It's like the career, our destiny, and I think sometimes it's not the right fit for us, and it just takes a point in our life where we have to ask some searching questions, do some inner work, and think, actually, what really makes my heart sing? What could I be doing? How could I be leveraging my talents, my abilities, my passions in a way that really enables me to flourish? And it's great to chat to people like you, Hannah, who've actually realised that.
Yeah, I think for a while I thought, because of course when I gave up rowing, I thought, well, what am I supposed to be doing with my life? And I was waiting for this answer. And I almost, because we've been brought up in very sort of vocational boxes, I almost expected to turn over a sort of a page in the newspaper at the weekend and see the thing I was supposed to be doing with my life. And then I think after a few years, I realised that wasn't going to happen. And I actually had to just get almost like a jigsaw. I had to put one bit in place and go, oh, I really like adventures. Okay, let's put that in there. Oh, I really like writing as well. Let's put that in there. I like giving talks about my adventures. Oh, I like, trying to help young kids get into adventure. And so I kind of built it piece by piece. And I think once you get your head around that, it feels less scary, because it is a scary thing to be heading into this black mess of unknown where you don't know what it looks like, especially when you're coming from stability and security. But I think the more you realize that feeling of unknown is a good thing, and that it does mean you're heading in the right direction. And even if there's this little fire in your belly and you're getting excited, then that means you're going the right way. Don't question anything else. Just keep going. It'll all work out.
Anxiety is the dizziness of freedom.
Yes, it is. I love it. I always say, if you're not 50% terrified, 50% excited, then it's not real life.
You're not living.
You're not living.
There's no point living if you can't feel alive.
Exactly. That is it. I'm with you on that one.
So a great quote, which I've lifted from your website, Anna, which I'd like you to expand on for me, please, is clearly a key part of your work. It's not just about investing in your own agenda, your own desire to adventure, but you want to spread that message to others. You want to encourage others, as you say, to grab life by the balls. Discuss.
I forgot that was even on my website. I think that is just about this. It can, as I said, that anxiety, that unknowing, it can be debilitating. And I've had it myself, where I feel like a rabbit in headlights, and I feel like the world is just happening to me. And I think what I'm trying to get across is all the best things in my life have happened when I've made action on the world, when I've gone, do you know what, I've got no idea where this is going or whether it's going to work out. I mean, my first adventure, I left my wonderful graduate corporate office job where I was being nicely paid, I had a steady career path. Something didn't feel right, and I went and bought a giant pink bicycle and rode through every state of America. And and I didn't know where it was going to lead, but I just had, I always think of it like a little compass in your heart, you know, and it just ticked into north. And I thought, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. I don't know what it's going to bring me yet, but I feel like the best version of myself. I feel like I am able to give the most of myself to the world, and therefore, surely, if I'm able to do that, then I'm probably going to get the most in return as well. And that's the way life should be. So, yeah, I think I have learned it. You've got to take action, even if it turns out not to be the right action. It will lead you eventually to where you want to be. So, yeah, that's what that quote's about.
You really capture the art of possibility for me. There's a book on this written by a chap called Benjamin Zander, and he talks about the measurement. The kind of conventional wisdom is the measurement world, where we set a goal and then we strive for it, but that's that predefined goal. Whereas if you embrace the art of possibility, you just create the conditions, you set the context, and then you allow life to unfurl, and amazing things happen. You don't quite know what they're going to be, but you're just ready and willing. I think you're cycling across the US is a perfect example of that, where you didn't quite know where you were going with it, but you were just creating the right context, and from that's birthed other adventures and ultimately a career in something you could be really passionate about. So I think that's really powerful.
Yeah, and sometimes I think as well, if I have got an adventure project in mind, or I've got a blank sheet of paper in front of me, I think of, I think it's, I mean, I hate to mention them, but I think it's Amazon that do this, that they write the press release before they start the project. So what is your end goal? In a dream world, what would this look like? And so I always think, well, could you write the press release for your life? Or could you write your intro that someone was going to read out when you do an interview about you? If you wrote that and then you work backwards from that, then that gives you so much clarity. You think, right, that is what I want, and let's see if we can take the first steps to get there. And all the stuff in between is a big mess, but you'll get there hopefully, or it will look different, but you've started.
I see. So by doing that press release, you're kind of visualizing where you want to be.
Yeah, and like you said about the art of possibility, it then becomes a possibility, because it doesn't, if you heard that about someone else, say whatever your dream bio is, it wouldn't be so ridiculous. You'd just listen and nod your head and go, oh, that's pretty cool. But the possibility that could be you, it stops you seeing these people as other, I think. And I think there's a lot of that. I see people that are incredibly academic, and I think, God, they are these otherworldly creatures. And the fact is, I don't actually, that's not my path. I don't want to do that thing. But obviously, I'm never going to run 100 meters as fast as Usain Bolt. But he is definitely other. But I think there's a lot of seeing other people as different and like they've got some magic tool. When the reality, and even celebrities are a great example of this. A lot of celebrities, the more time goes on, the more I realize the good ones are incredibly talented at what they do, and they're there through a combination of talent and hard work. They're not there just because they got lucky. Obviously that plays a part, but and then suddenly they don't become so otherworldly. They're just humans. So I think that's cool.
Yeah, I think it's a really good quote from Steve Jobs about this. He talks about the moment he realized that everyone else was just like him. They're just having a go. They're actually winging it as well. And as soon as you realize that everyone else is pretty much in the same boat, and you just put that imposter syndrome to one side, and you just kind of go out and grab life by the balls, it's incredibly effective.
Yeah, no, I agree. That's it. No one knows what they're doing.
Yeah. Least of all doctors.
You really need to know what you're doing, and I hope you know what you're doing. But, especially in extreme environments, there must be such an element of just, rolling your sleeves up and making do with what you've got and having that confidence. So, yeah, more power to you. It's amazing.
Yeah, well, I think a big part of our role is actually acknowledging when we really don't know. And we have a very imperfect understanding of the human body. A lot of the way people work and function there's not really a scientific explanation for that. And I think that the more we can put our God complex to one side and just sometimes say, hey, look, fess up, I really don't know, I can't fix you. I think that can be really powerful in itself.
Oh my gosh, that sounds like the human body is like life. I think, there's no formula, is there? It's chaos.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just another massive complex thing that we haven't figured out
there
yet.
You go. Wow, how wonderful is that?
And a big part of what you, one of the themes that you explore with your girl guides and your school groups and your other talks that you do is about this sense of vulnerability, about not being quite sure of yourself, that inner critic that everyone has. Can you speak on that for a moment?
Yeah, I think that is, and that again comes from the perception that everyone knows what they're doing. And I think we, especially with social media and especially with youngsters, quite often all they see is that the tip of the iceberg of success. They see, this is what I wanted to do, woohoo, I've done it. And they don't actually see all the mess and the struggle and the mishaps and the failures that go on beneath that. So when I started doing adventures, and then when I got involved in the girl guiding side of things, I thought my main aim with these youngsters is to show them that if you do go for something that is way out there, that you really are testing yourself and pushing yourself, that there will be mishaps and there will be disasters and there will be things you don't know the answer to. But you've just got to find a way to keep going and not question not question yourself. You've got to trust yourself. And the amazing thing about that is the only person you rely on to do that and to find the will to keep going is yourself. So when I talk to these youngsters, I tell them about my crazy adventures and whatever else, but then I try and get them to talk about what they want to do and try and get them to understand that no one knows them and their ability and when they feel terrified and when they feel excited other than them. Like, no one can tell them that. And not even their parents. You can be guided by other people, but ultimately at the end of the day, you've got to rely on yourself and you've got to learn to trust yourself. And that sense of empowerment, I think, it's just a really powerful thing to give to a youngster, because then this little light bulb goes on in their head and you think, what? And you see them think, what do you mean it's up to me? What do you mean I could, if I want to do that or I don't want it? That's completely my choice. And I'm like, yeah, that's your choice. I can stand here and tell you stories. So I think it's a really important thing and something I really love talking to youngsters about, and especially on the recent Barefoot Britain run, the mad barefoot run through Great Britain. There was a point where I'd said I was going to try and run 2,600 miles, and I was 1,000 miles in, and I got a foot infection, which was all kinds of, embarrassing, because all of the naysayers at the start would say, what happens when you cut your foot on glass and all of this. And I got this foot infection. My foot blew up like a balloon. I was on antibiotics, and I had all these talks booked into youngsters where I was going to stand in front of them and say, girls, you've got to go for your dreams. And I'm stood there with my foot in a bandage in agony, not knowing if I'm going to be able to carry on with this run. And I thought, I'm going to keep doing these talks anyway, because this is it, girls. This is the reality. Here I am. I've told the whole world. I've been all over the news telling them I'm going to run the distance, 2,600 miles. And I'm 1,000 miles in. My run could be over. My foot's in a bandage. And I don't know what the solution is yet. I don't know if this is the end of my run. And that was more me. I was terrified to do that. But their reaction was amazing. They didn't care. They just, they said, oh, of course, I think there was a wall of silence at one of the guiding groups. And I thought, I'm probably going to have some really difficult questions about, how you're going to cope with not finishing your run. And this little brownie guy just put her hand up and she said, Anna, when you make it to London, are you going to run back to the Shetland Islands? I just said, no, I think I'll probably stop. But the fact that she'd just gone, well, of course you're going to carry on. Of course there'll be a way to finish. Don't worry about it. So I just think that's amazing. So what I've been trying to do is just share the full reality of it. Share all the highs, all the lows. I did a series on YouTube as I went along, because I wanted the girls to see that when you take on something big that is out there and unknown, that there are ups and downs, and there are times when you don't know the answer, but it's just about finding a little glimmer of hope and seeing if you can keep going. Fingers crossed.
Yeah. Do you think that spending all this time with all these children, do you think you've taken something from them? Do you think you've brought the spirit of childhood into your own approach to adventure? Because one thing I've observed is you are very, very playful, and you have fun with what you're doing. A lot of the kind of adventure world is quite austere. It's quite serious. It's very kind of performance focused. And you seem, you're coming at it from a completely different angle. I mean, just to illustrate this point, perhaps you could show us your magic adventure pants.
These creatures. Dun, 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 dun. And I'm going to give you a visual. Wow. I'm going to give you the description here, the alternative description. That is a pair of leggings with a unicorn having a fight with a robot dog, T-Rex, under a rainbow and a star-spangled sky. I mean, who doesn't want these leggings in their life? These are called my pants of perspective. And they got so named that because when I did this run through New Zealand, it was about 2,000 miles along the Tiaroa Trail. Did it with all my stuff on my back, which was not the most sensible idea, but it worked. And there was a point where I was 3 days into the New Zealand bush, and it was 4 days to a town the other side, and I badly sprained my ankle. And basically it blew up like a balloon, and I thought, oh my goodness me, I felt like I was at rock bottom. And I had my spot tracker, so I could have pressed for an SOS helicopter, but I thought I don't want to do that because obviously that is a precious resource. And I was trying to find that line of, do I push on? Do I go back on myself? Where's the line between stupid and brave? And anyway, and I had these in my bag. And so the night I went to sleep and I woke up in the morning and I just thought, oh, I remember I've got those, like I call them my magic pants of perspective. And I pulled them on and looked at my ballooning mess of an ankle, strapped my ankle up, and I thought, I just snapped me back to reality. I thought, I've got food, I've got shelter, I've got ankle strapping, I've got rivers to ice my ankle in. If I know there's a few wilderness huts ahead, if I can just make a bit of steady progress and see if I can, I've got enough food. So yeah, my pants of perspective. So they snap. Then the kids love them. Kids love them.
They enabled this incredible psychological self-rescue in New Zealand.
That's it. And that's what I say to the kids, these are my pants of perspective, but whatever your thing is, like, have that mental tool that just snaps you back to reality and reminds you that, you do still have choices, and it kind of just calms you down. It makes you trust yourself. But yeah, I definitely take inspiration from the kids. I mean, when I'm a bit in a selfish way, when I'm doing a long adventure, they become these talks to the kids, they become a reason to keep going sometimes, because I think I've promised to be there and I don't want to let them down. And B, when I get there, they say that you preach what you need to learn, and the more the words come out your mouth and what you would tell your younger self, the more that kind of reflects back on you. And kids just have such a natural sense of awe and wonder about the world, and to have that reflected back at you, and to see that, especially up until the age of about 9, they don't see any limits. They don't, their kind of frame of reference. I mean, they just tell me things like, oh, I'm going to rollerblade to Greece and meet the polar bears. And I'm going, don't think there are polar bears in Greece. Might be a bit hilly getting there, but yeah, you do it. You just do that. But I think we've got to start with that craziness, and then you can whittle it down. But we never start with the craziness. We always start with the things that we can't do, and the critic and the realist come into our head, which is what I talk a lot about when I give talks. It's about the dreamer, the realist, and the critic. Those 3 voices in your head.
Yes. Okay. So you're kind of marrying them up, but you always start with the dreamer, and then you've got to start with the
dreamer. Yeah. And not acknowledge it's the dreamer. Acknowledge that the thoughts of the dreamer are ridiculous, and you're probably not going to do exactly what the dreamer says, but you've got to allow them that voice. And I think we don't do that as adults enough.
And Anna, you're also a huge advocate for women in adventure in general, and you've set up a women's adventure community called the Adventure Queens with Emma Frampton.
Yes.
And I've just been on the website and looking at your merchandise.
Oh, yeah.
Thinking about making a purchase of a T-shirt, and you've just got, I love these. The T-shirts have got stuff on them like, let's take this outside, and all guts, no nuts. Love it.
Yeah. Well,
tell us about that project.
That one's all guts, no nuts is really popular, actually. Well, that came from... and Adventure Queens is an amazing community. It's an predominantly online community, Facebook, Instagram. And it came from, I'd done all these big adventures, but when I would give talks, women specifically would come up to me at the end of the talks and they would say, oh, I'd love to do what you do, but XYZ, and I can't do this, or I'm even scared just to go and camp out in my local forest or do a wild camping session. And I just thought, it feels like there's this barrier. And they're seeing this barrier, and they were saying, I don't know who to go with. I don't know. I'm afraid because I don't know what I'm doing. And I was trying to say to them, I don't know what I'm doing either. You know, so when I went on my American ride, which was my first big adventure, I'd never wild camped before. And my friend Naomi, who was in the army, and she said, oh, Anna, I'll take you out to Dartmoor. We'll go at night and we'll hike, you know, we'll be 300 meters apart and we'll camp apart and you'll get used to it. And I was too scared. I said, no. I said, I can't do it. I said, I can't do it, Naomi. And so I decided to do my first wild camp on a road in America where there were bears, because I thought, in Alaska, because I thought, well, there's no choice then. I've just got to sleep or not sleep. But I wanted the girls, the women and adventure queens, to have that opportunity. So I think it started with, I put out a tweet and said, I'm thinking of offering some tips on wild camping for first timers. Anyone interested? And I just got this flood of replies. I think we had like 600 people on the email list in a few days, and it just grew from there. So it started with wild camping tips and advice, but now it's just a place where girls can meet up, mums as well, and talk about adventure, find people to go on adventures with. And there's a main Facebook group, but there's also 40 local groups around the country with specific leaders. And we've got all these amazing volunteers. And yeah, it's just about trying to remove that barrier of, I really want to do X, Y, Z, but I can't because I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know anyone to go with. And that is celebrated. It's a really positive forum. We make sure there's no negativity in there. And hopefully gets more people outside.
Fantastic. Yeah, that's a really great initiative. Let's talk a little bit about your latest adventure. So you decided to run the length of the UK from Shetlands down to London without any shoes on. How did that come about?
It's a very good question. Because I fully put my hands up that it sounds insane. And it purely came from, I thought, right, I want time to do a new adventure. I want to do another run. I want to do it through Britain because I'd become the ambassador for Girl Guiding, and I wanted to talk to young girls all the way along. And I thought, okay, I'll just do this run. And then there was something basically in the pit of my stomach. I thought, I could do a 2,000-mile run. I thought, and this isn't in an arrogant way, but I just thought, I know I can do that. You know, I've done it before. And so, challenge is all relative. So for me, it didn't make me feel that 50% terrified, 50% excited. So I'd read Born to Run, I'd got interested in minimalist running, and I just had this crazy little voice in my head that said, why don't you do it with no shoes on? And which was the dreamer voice, right? And then first of all, straight away, next voice comes in, you can't do that, it's ridiculous. Straight away, cuts it off. Yeah. But then it just wouldn't leave me alone. I thought, is it ridiculous? I wonder, ... And I find that's where all the best adventure ideas start from. And I thought, I spent about 1.5 years trying to work out whether I thought it was possible, full stop, whether it was possible for me, whether it was possible generally. And then I convinced myself that it was possible. Whether I could do it was still going to be an unknown, but that it was something that was possible. And so I'd go to the start and I would give it a crack. And I would be completely honest that I'd prepared as best I could, but it was still going to be like, here we go. I've got no idea what's going to happen. Are my feet going to fall off? Am I going to get injuries?
Those are the key ingredients for any good adventure. I think if you knew you were going to succeed, or everything was controlled and known, then it's not an adventure by definition, surely.
That's it. You don't, and that's what adventures are about. They're about growth, and that goes for life as well. If you stand there on the start line or at the beginning of a project and you think even if it's a tiny little voice that just goes, yeah, I've got this, then you're not going to learn as much as you should. You're not doing yourself justice. So I think there has to be a little voice in your head that's going, what are you doing? And that's a good thing.
Anna, I'll tell you what, I've also dabbled in barefoot running.
Have you?
Not quite to the extent that you have. But yeah, a few years ago, I picked up a pair of these puppies.
Oh, little monkey shoes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're the Vibrams, yeah.
Got some miles on them. To be honest, I mean, I wear them all the time, just socially.
Yeah, that's the best way.
People who are fashion conscious are genuinely offended when I wear these. They just think they're the most offensive
Why
things.
do people have such a problem with them? It makes me laugh. People get really...
I know. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, anyway, I don't care. But, I really enjoyed running in these. It's and the thing I love most is how kind of how silent you are when you're when you're climbing, when you're going on hills.
Yeah.
And you're kind of finding your way through. You're on your toes. You're not heel striking. You're kind of on your toes, and nobody can hear you. And I just kind of creep up and sneak up on people. I love that.
You're like a ninja. I know, and it terrifies people as well if you're on like a canal towpath and they don't hear you coming, and they woo. Yeah, you're like a barefoot ninja. No, it's great.
You're like a shadow moving over the land.
You're like Liam Neeson, only better.
and unless you've done maybe 5 to 6 miles on just concrete or tarmac, and then I've found I'm less ninja like. I'm the hobble starts to happen.
Yeah, I think it is a shock, and the first 6 months of me, because I was in minimalist shoes like those anyway, and I think the first 6 months of me properly starting training and upping my mileage, my calves were agony and my Achilles was agony, and but then eventually it got used to it. But yeah, I mean, your calf muscles take a battering, and that's why unfortunately it's a really slow, steady progress to get down to those minimalist shoes. And I think that's why a lot of people just sack it off, because they've only got a certain amount of time to run in a day, and they don't want to spend time building back up again and dropping their mileage down. So but wearing them in everyday life is a great way to go. I mean, the muscular change in my legs when I started wearing shoes just in everyday life, minimalist shoes, was massive.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and what's interesting about barefoot running is it's as with all these things, it's not just a case of you just put some different shoes on, you go running, but there's a whole ideology, there's a whole church that's been built around it. And you mentioned Born to Run. There's a character in that called Barefoot Ted.
Yeah.
And he's part of this whole movement where it becomes a lot more spiritual. It's about your kind of connection with the earth and all this kind of. Do you buy into all of that? Did you feel more connected to the landscapes that you're passing through as a result of this? Are you a bona fide barefoot kind
evangelist?
Evangelist.
Do you know what? I'm going to break the hearts of all the barefoot evangelists out there. I am not. And this is what became really interesting through the run, because I would get so many emails from the barefoot running community, which is an amazing, it's like an underground community. People saying what you're doing for the movement is fantastic. I know you'll never go back to shoes after this. But it was so hard. The run was so hard. It pushed me to like the edge of my limits. And so so when I finished, I'm back in shoes. I'm in minimalist shoes, but still. So I guess I'm not someone. I think a lot of that movement. There's a lot of, you should run without shoes on or minimalist shoes, and that is the way you should run. Whereas I just think if you can run and you can be pain-free, run in whatever you feel comfortable in. I think sometimes the minimalist end of the spectrum gets forgotten. We experience pain when we're running and we go for more support. We don't actually ever go, well, actually, maybe I should have less support and trust my body. So I'm definitely a fan of it. Your body is such an incredible machine. And I think in the run, I learned that, because although I had a foot infection in what ended up being 2,300 miles of running with no shoes on, I had one day off for a sore calf, and that was it. And that is just a testament to the style of running, I think, and how the muscles in my body were able to cope with the amount of loading that was going through them. So I'm not a barefoot evangelist. I don't think everyone should be wearing minimalist shoes, but I think if you're interested in it, definitely try it. And I think more people should give it a go, because you feel like a kid. You just feel like a kid that's running down to the sweet shop. And there was one day where I was in the Yorkshire Dales, and I remember the sun was going down. I'm running down a valley. I think it was into Kettlewell, and the beautiful golden hour, and I'm running down bare feet down the road, like grass and trees around me, and I felt strong. My feet were really strong, like panther paws on the road, and I did feel really connected at that point. I thought, this is a great way to experience your country.
Yeah, I really like the stripped back, the kind of minimalism of that as a concept as well, because I think certainly in the adventure space in general, there's so much gear, and there's also, especially, this is very much a British thing, obsessing over and chatting about gear. I mean, is that something you found in your experience of adventure? And was it quite liberating to actually have less on your feet rather than more?
Yeah, this is why I love running, full stop, because you all you need is a pair of trainers, or not in my case. But I do like that. I do find it liberating. And I mean, I always find before an adventure, it's the last 2 months where you start obsessing about your kit, and you start questioning whether you've got the right sleeping bag and this, that, and the other, and reading about really like minutiae details of the kit you're taking. And it doesn't
Reading
matter.
all the reviews.
Oh God, it doesn't matter. I just think that's what I've learned.
Yeah.
And I mean, I will be honest with cycling, for example. We were in South America, me and my friend were cycling the Andes, and we met these 2 other guys, and I think they were from Sheffield or something, and they started asking us questioning about our dyno hubs and gear ratios, and I just like, it's got wheels and it goes, I'll bodge it if it breaks. So although I try and do a bit of kit research, I generally realise that it's just a massive black hole, and that you could spend so much of your time there, and as long as it keeps you warm, or it moves forward, or it works, then that'll do, really.
Yeah, I mean, I found the same out. I think that the kit side of things can be a huge distraction from the experience, and I've found big trips that I've done, I've spent thousands of pounds in outdoor shops, getting way more than I need.
Yeah.
And then when I'm on my way to the airport, rather than being energized and excited about the experience I'm about to have, I'm ruminating over, oh, did I remember to pack this? Have I got that? And everything's all kind of packed away in little kind of in dry bags, and it's all carefully kind of organized, and that's where my head is, and it's not really looking forward to what I'm going to be doing. I think maybe it's a function of just the world that we live in. It's the kind of the commercial machine that's found its way into adventure, but I really like the way you've been able to kind of put that in its place. You've kind of, this is almost a wholesale rejection of that.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. And I get so inspired when I meet, especially on a trail, and I meet, this amazing guy I met when I was in New Zealand, 65-year-old from Canada, and his name's Coach Ron. I called him Coach Ron because he was always looking after other people. And he just hiked with all of like old gear, bits of twine tied together. He had this Tupperware box on his front. And whenever you asked him, it like tied on like round his neck with a Tupperware box. And whether you asked him, Coach, what's in the box? He'd just say stuff. And he just had like gaffer taped it together, and I just love people like that. I just think it doesn't matter to them, and you learn to love whatever you go with anyway. So I think it's brilliant.
Yeah, I love that stuff. Yeah, do you know what thing that really brings that home for me is when we do medical cover for kind of commercial treks and things. You've got the UK clients are all in Gucci. They've got all the gear. They've got all the Gore-Tex and everything, and the local guides are just in flip flops and is beating up old anorak, and it's it just reminds you just don't need all of this stuff to have that experience. It's nice, but it's not essential, and it's a huge potential distraction.
It's absolutely not. And then I think it does it also, if you spent a lot of money, it sometimes affects your decision-making ability, because when you get 10 days into a trip, I always find that you want to send a load of rubbish home that you're not using. But if you spent more money on something, you're thinking, well, it's like sunk cost bias, isn't it? You're thinking, well, I can't let that go because I've spent X, Y, Z on it. When the reality is it's you don't need it. And you realize that very quickly. You're like, oh, I don't need these 3 different shaped pans or whatever you've got with you. So
and especially because a lot of your human power journeys have been self-supported.
Yes.
And you've been on foot. You have to be very careful about how much you take, because every gram that you carry around in your back is that's just more load you're putting through your legs. So how have you been able to really strip back your gear to what's essential for your journey?
Yeah, I think it's about, the first thing is asking the question of what kind of journey you're on. So I've got some friends who do a lot of fast packing, and they're going for, or they might be supported, but some of them are, some of them aren't, but they're going for like very fast time. They're trying to move quickly, be light. The way I like to adventure is I like to be done by sort of 4 o'clock in the evening, cooking up my dinner on a stove in the middle of nowhere, and reading on my Kindle. So I got my Kindle with me, and being disconnected from the world in wilderness. And you go to sleep at like 7 o'clock, and then you wake up at 8 o'clock the next morning. That's my kind of adventure, is about using, and you meet people, and you stop and you chat to them, and you stop in towns. So I tend to go a little bit heavier than some people would if they were hardcore trying to go for speed. So I think that's the first decision about what you take with you. And then it's just I always do the 10-day rule. Yeah, whatever, if you go for the first 10 days, whatever you haven't used in the first 10 days, stick it in a post back home, because it's only giving you extra weight. And then if you're going through a lot of different seasons, in America, for example, I'd left parcels at home in my bedroom back home, and they were posted out to me. So when the weather changed, you know, when I made it to Chicago and winter hits, then I'd have a different sleeping bag posted to me and stuff like that. So I think that's a good option. And in New Zealand, you had to plan ahead and use food boxes, so you'd have to post food boxes ahead to these slightly remote little towns. But what was annoying about that is you'd eaten something for 10 days and then you'd get to the food box, get really excited, rip it open and realise it was the same crap that you've been eating for the last, 10 days. And I got so over peanut butter. I was just like, it is interesting, but I kind of take a halfway house approach to try and be as prepared as I need to be safe and comfortable for me. I like to be comfortable. I like to have a tent to sleep in and some decent food. I always carry chocolate because that's really important for morale. So I think it's a real preference thing. But sometimes you do make silly decisions, like you might not. I always underestimate how much food I need, and I'll always have
particularly chocolate by the sound.
Particularly chocolate, yeah, exactly. But sometimes I think, I'm sure it'll be, I've got the chocolate in, but I'm sure I can survive on half a pack of noodles a night or something. And then actually you eat that half pack of noodles and you think, why didn't I just carry a bit more? Now I'm a bit miserable. So you've got to kind of try and put yourself in the mindset of, rather than being a comfortable mindset when you're packing, it's like the mindset of, okay, I've been running all day, every day. What do I want?
Yeah, I did an adventure race last year, and we were obsessively trying to get every gram out of our bags, cut everything out. What can we get rid of? And we ended up we want to take some whiskey.
Yeah, important.
And we took it in urine sample pots because that was the smallest volume. And it was a pathetic amount of whiskey. And I wish I'd just taken the hit and just taken the whole bottle.
Yeah.
Honestly, just certain little luxuries are just totally worth it, aren't they?
That's it. And you're going to be tired, so you might as well carry a bit more anyway. So yeah, and that's why I like cycle. I mean, I love running, but cycle touring is great for that because you can just stick a little bit of extra in there, and it's not going to sap your energy as much as if you're running.
So it's been really, really great chatting to you, Anna. And but before we go, a lot of our audience are medics working on the front line, and they are currently practicing extreme medicine on their doorstep. And I wondered if you had any words of that you'd like to share with them.
I would just say, I know there's a lot of, accolades given to people that go out and do these crazy extreme things. But as you've just said, the extreme world has come to our doorstep at this time. And they are doing an amazing job, and we need them more than I think they realise. And so we need their strength and we need their resilience. And I would just say, if they're feeling like there are times when they don't know what they're doing, or they're so exhausted they can't even say their own name, the second they find that will to keep going, then they are just doing the whole country a massive service, and we're so grateful to them.
Thank you. How can people find you online?
I am Anna McNuff, which is Anna and then MCNUFF. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, annamcnuff.com. I'm the only Anna McNuff in the world. Should be pretty easy to find. And I've got bright pink hair, so you can't miss me.
Well, it's been great chatting. Thanks so much for your time today, Anna.
Thank you. Bye.